Hey fellow backyard boyers, Nick here. Well, today I've been nominated to do the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge by a friend and fellow archer here on YouTube, Sean Woods. You can see his picture right there. And this is an arrow that he's made. So, like I said, I've been nominated to do the Ice Bucket Challenge. So without further ado, here we go. Alright. So, now that I've done that, normally you're supposed to challenge 3 other people to do it as well and to donate to ALS. And you know, ALS is a very scary disease, and you know, I've been able to see what it can do to people, and it definitely is deserving of the exposure it's been getting. But you know, my view on donating has always been that it should be about, you know, what you feel you should do in your heart to help others. You know, when I first started hearing about the Ice Bucket Challenge, I was a little leery about it, but it's turned into a beautiful thing for a lot of people, and you know, I think it's really helped raise awareness for just giving in general. And you know, sometimes people want to give, but they don't know how, or they don't have that push. And in a lot of ways, this is kind of a big push. One thing I kind of wanted to talk to you guys about today is, you know, so growing up, you know, ALS hasn't been the family disease. Just, it's kind of hard to talk about, but everything's good now. So, you know, growing up, it was really hard because you know, my mother, you know, she really took good care of me and my brother, and my dad, you know, was always there. We were always a pretty tight family, and you know, for a long time she's been fighting kidney problems. You know, for us being, you know, having Hawaiian ancestry and being part Pacific Islander, you know, there's a higher risk of kidney disease. And when I was young, my mother was diagnosed with end-stage renal failure. Both her kidneys, well, one of her kidneys had completely shut down. The other one was a very limited function, and it came down to the point where she had to start going on dialysis. And there were lots of options at the time. You know, she could have done it at home with us, but you know, I was young. My brother was in high school. You know, it was tough, and so she made the decision to go a couple times a week to a hospital and have the dialysis done. And you know, it was the hardest thing because she was there and she wasn't there. You know, it wasn't like you hear stories of people whose mothers are sick and have a disease, and you know, they're bedridden all the time, or they just never see them. Or it was weird because she was there, she was always around, but you know, she was always tired. You know, she was on a restricted diet, you know, restricted fluid intake. It was really tough. You know, growing up like that, you know, you know, we had to miss out a lot of family events and family holidays. We couldn't take trips because, you know, it took a lot of coordination to figure out, you know, are there dialysis centers nearby, you know, and, you know, a lot of times, you know, I mean, there was no family dinners because she wasn't there most of the time. Well, she wasn't there for some of the time, maybe not most of the time. You know, I remember early on, she started attending Kidney Foundation meetings, and we started getting to know the people who worked at the Kidney Foundation, and we started volunteering. And one thing I love about the National Kidney Foundation in Hawaii is that they do a lot of community outreach. They do a lot of testing to get people tested early, to see if they are facing, kidney problems, just helping with the prevention of, a fairly preventable disease. But, that, like I said, it was tough, and I remember, it was just like there was this fog over our family for the longest time. And then one day, I remember it was the day before I had to go back to school, and it was an exciting time. We were doing some last minute shopping, and while we were at the store shopping, I remember my mom got a call. And when she was done, she started crying. And we didn't really know what was going on, and then she said that, it was mixed news, because a young man had just passed. He had just gotten into an accident and he had died. But he was an organ donor. And, she was a match. It wasn't a perfect match. She was very lucky. There were actually, it was hard because there were other people who didn't get it. It's always hard when you're dealing with, life and death. But she got the call. She was a match. She had to go in and get tested, so we all just gave up what we were doing and we went down to the hospital. They ran tests. Turned out she was a perfect match. She went into surgery, and then, in a few days she was in recovery, and it was just so different. I mean, just immediately you could see that her color returned. She seemed healthy. And I mean, transplantation isn't a cure. It's an ongoing process. It's a treatment. It's not perfect. She's still on a lot of, different drugs for different things, just to, help keep everything stable, keep it from rejecting the kidney. But, I mean, that was such a huge blessing. I really got my mother back. We started doing more things, and, I started getting more involved with the Kidney Foundation every year, or every 2 years. We'd go to the U.S. Transplant Games, where, it's like an Olympic-style event for people who've had transplants. And, there's just, it's amazing how many lives are touched. And, if you think about it, my mother shouldn't be alive. Her kidneys were gone. I mean, she's had one removed. She shouldn't be alive. And it's a really heavy thing, in both ways, that, donation of organ donation is, like they say, the gift of life. But, there, like anything else, there's always a price in both directions. And, it's hard. And that's why I really like the Kidney Foundation. They've always been there with support, before, during, and after. Even now, my mother still, receives a lot of support from them. And, she's gone on and done some speaking, and it's just, it's just been really amazing that way. So, I know I've kind of gone on. This is a really personal thing for me, and I normally don't talk about it much. But I figured, with the Ice Bucket Challenge, it was a good time to kind of get it out. And what I wanted to do is, normally, like I said, you're supposed to challenge 3 other people to do the bucket challenge. And you know, I've decided that rather than do that, I'm going to give myself a different challenge. What I'm going to do is I'm going to be doing 3 videos, and in these videos I'm going to be making different things, so like maybe a bow or a set of arrows or something like that. And then when I'm finished, I'm going to be putting the end product up on eBay's charity donation auction. They have a really neat program where you can actually put an item up for auction, and you can put up to 100% of the proceeds to charity, and I'm going to be putting 100% to the National Kidney Foundation in Hawaii. You know, they do a lot of help, like I said, with, you know, outreach and awareness, because, you know, Pacific Islanders, you know, a lot of the people who live in Hawaii are really at high risk, and higher risk of kidney failure more than most places. Hawaii is just, you know, there's a lot of people with type 2 diabetes, a lot of people with high blood pressure. You know, it's a huge problem in Hawaii. And I just think it's amazing that they're doing work that, you know, impacts, you know, where I grew up, where I live, where I'm from, and, you know, my heritage, my people, in that sense. So, you know, as far as donation goes, you know, I believe that, you know, giving of your time and your money, you know, donating to a cause is good, and, you know, sometimes you can't swing that financially. You know, I'm going to be doing this little mini challenge for myself, but I'd like to challenge you. You know, you don't have to do anything rash. I mean, if you want to make a statement, if you want to visibly raise awareness, I mean, just how viral things have been going, it's amazing. You know, you can go that route, but I just challenge you to do something, to just do something to make a difference, whether it's donating money, you know, doing something where, like the eBay thing, where you donate an item, or you post up an item and donate the proceeds, or you give of your time, you give of your talents, give of your resources. It doesn't have to be to a large group. I mean, you can start something today, or just give to somebody who needs help. I'm sure you know somebody who needs some help right now, and, you know, times are tough, but, you know, it's like I say, you know, we can be tougher, and I mean, ultimately, we just need to all pull together and just help each other. You know, I've said before that I don't sell my bows for several reasons. One of them is that I don't feel like I should sell them for profit for myself. You know, that being able to do these things, being able to make these bows, being able to do all the things I do, it's really been a gift and a blessing, and I feel like I should give freely of that, as much as I can, to everyone. And that's the only way others will be able to discover what talents they have. And then, you know, if I can just help one person discover that they're good at something and that they can make a difference, then, you know, that's where it's at. So, I guess in summary, that's my challenge. Go do something. Go help somebody. Go make a difference. You know, it's as ambiguous as that sounds, you know. It can be small, it can be big, doesn't matter what it is. It can be anonymous, you can take responsibility for it doesn't matter. Just do something good. And hopefully I haven't rambled on too long, so I'm going to go, and I wanted to ask you guys, you know, what do you think I should do? What 3 items should I make? What 3 videos do you want to see? What, you know, what would you like to bid for? And it's for a good cause. I truly believe that. So, it's been great talking to you, and thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time.